Folks, welcome back. Albin Sadar is my guest. Perhaps you've heard of him. Albin Sadar, aren't you part of that team? You and your brother, you're identical twins, and sometimes you come on the Eric Metaxas show and you confuse people deliberately.
Yes, we are. I am, and I've heard of us too, Albin and Tony Sadar. Yeah, but I'm Albin. I'm Albin this time.
Tony's the ugly, he's the ugly one.
Yeah.
Even though you're identical, it's
Thank you for recognizing that.
I've
Yes.
said this before, it's really uncanny that you and your brother, you're identical twins, and he looks exactly like you, as anybody could see. But oddly enough, you don't look that much like him.
No, no. I,
It's very
I
hard to process, but it's true. And I stated here for the record.
yes.
Um,
I think I just blew my mind and then some.
and then some. All right. So I'm just talking to you today because
Yes.
I think of Tony as redundant. I mean, you're identical, you're very similar, and we don't need him. We have you. That's good enough. So, Albin Sadar, you've just written a couple of articles about what's going on in America. And I don't know about you, but I live in America and I'm curious of what you have to say. Where are these articles published?
Well, you can find them at theblaze.com. You can find them at americanthinker.com. You can find them at stream.org, where John
Ah,
Zvira also writes, right?
okay, the one at the Blaze, I put that on X uh, as soon as it came out. Let's talk about that one. It's a great thesis.
Yeah. I love it. I originally, when I sent it into the Blaze, I've got a great editor over there. I called it Donald J. Trump, an American Legend. Now, he changed the title, and I actually love the new title. It's Leftists Have Tried to Destroy Trump. Instead, they made him a legend. And so that's my whole thesis, that what he has gone through, and I spell it all out, and compared to other people in America, like, of course, George Washington's a legend, but compared to a bunch of Davy Crockett, people like that, you'll see why Donald Trump already is of legendary fame, because he ticks all the boxes, as they say.
Well, okay, so the left tried to destroy him and they turned him into a legend. That's really true. I mean, what we're seeing every day, I mean, this is just part of life every day right now in the first weeks of the Trump administration, the second Trump administration. It's an astonishing moment in American history. Talk about rising from the ashes. I mean, this is it is incredible how they try to destroy him, what we've been through as a nation. So to see him back, most of the country, in case people didn't know, most of the country voted for him. Most of the country approves of the job he's doing right now. So it's a fascinating moment how hard they worked to destroy him. And ironically, they strengthened him.
Yeah, that's the thing. If he had not risen, had he crawled off the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania, and they snuck him into his limo and they whisked him away, people would have said, "Oh, gee, he escaped," but he didn't. He rose above. You see in that famous photo, he rose above the Secret Service agents. So if somebody was still up there on the rooftop with his high-powered rifle and his sight and all that, that would have been Trump being a goner, and it would have been like, "Hey, he's showing off. Look at that guy." But no, he got up and said, "Fight, fight, fight." And it's really funny because he's not, and I write about this in the article, he's not a guy that really puts out those phrases like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, or Gorbachev, tear down this wall. No, he says things like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. This I also, what's so funny about that?
Hilarious.
Yeah.
I just, before we go off on this, I just want to, for the record, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Um, JFK didn't think of that phrase, that lapidary phrase off the top of his head. Ask not what your country can do, rather ask what you can do for your country. The most of those phrases were written by speechwriters. So we know that JFK didn't actually say that, but you're right. He is remembered for that in the same way that who else did? When Reagan says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," he's remembered for that. But that was in a speech. Trump, interestingly, is known for what comes right off the top of his head. I mean, fight, fight, fight was not in a speech. it just came right out of him. He didn't know he was going to get shot at. It just comes right out of him. And a lot of this stuff that we remember about him, it's just interesting to me that
Yeah.
it just comes right out of him, and it's memorable. But
Yeah,
it's funny,
and
really funny.
I have to point something out. In the early days, you actually saw Eric Metaxas. You saw his possibility of his legendary status, because in my article I also mentioned, that song, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. That made a big hit over in the X and on the internet and all that. But you have the Donald the Caveman series. Now, this is before Donald Trump was, in a sense, famous. You saw his potential there. He acts like a caveman, but like a caveman, he builds things, and he's kind of crude, but he's in your face. And you did that with a series of 3 books. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's interesting because I've told this story before, but my very, very dear friend, Tim Raglan, he illustrated a lot of the children's books that I have written. And we did a number of tall tales together. He did Pecos Bill. I didn't write that one, but I remember it was Tim Raglan that got me thinking about Trump. Because in the beginning, I was like, nah, I don't like Trump. I'm a New Yorker. He's kind of vulgar. I don't know. And he says, no. You're not paying attention. You need to watch him on the stump of these rallies or whatever it was. This is way back early 2016. And I remember thinking, he's kind of like a cartoon character, like a tall tale hero.
Yeah.
He's not like a normal, there's something about him. And so, yes, you're right. Like, I saw him as this tall tale figure, not just, a president, but there was something about him. So that's when I wrote, we created this character, Donald the Caveman, because not caveman in the pejorative sense, but caveman like he's this hero. He comes along and he says, hey, I see a problem. There's a swamp. We need to drain it. Let's drain it. There people are coming in here, bad people. We need to build a wall. And so there is that side to him that it makes him a legend. I mean, that's the point of your article, that there's something about this guy that it's so out of the ordinary, and that he is legendary in the way that he behaves. But I mean, why is that, Albin? It's interesting. It's not just because the left tried to destroy him.
That's what's so funny about it, because you think of somebody like a Dan Quayle. He spells potato wrong, and it's like, whoa, that's the end of your career. You can't even spell potato. Kristi Noem, she says in her book, oh, I shot a dog. It's like, whoa, Kristi Noem is a dog shooter. He comes out there and he'll say some of the most outrageous things. And that's another reason why I think God is really looking out for him. The left can't get a handle. They can't get in. They can't get their claws into some of the stupid things. You would think, like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. That's really stupid. And yet, that's what you remember from that debate where Kamala had said so many lies and so many distortions, and nobody challenged her, but nobody remembers any of them anymore. They just remember they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. It's hysterical. And it's like, so somehow he's not just protected by turning your head and missing his head, but he's protected by over $1 billion was spent against him in that campaign. How can you lose a campaign? Except, Kamala, I don't think her IQ is above 100. So you put the kind of somebody that doesn't have a lot of intellect against the guy who's created businesses and is.
It's not that she's so dumb. It's that she is just one of the worst candidates. I don't think I can think of a candidate worse than Kamala Harris. She couldn't speak. It was just painful to watch her. I mean, she makes like Dick Gephardt look like Ronald Reagan or something. She was so bad. But Trump, I think we're talking about it. He's the real deal. And that resonates in a world where most politicians are either totally phony or sort of phony or mostly phony or phony adjacent. He's just the real thing. So when he says something like they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, most people know, yeah, that's true. There's weird stuff happening in these towns, and it's reported on. The news refuses to report on it, but we're hearing about it. And it follows once you kind of understood what was really going on. But the point is, he dares to say it, and he gets rewarded because people are hungry for somebody who is willing to say what nobody else is willing to say. He's the champion, of the truth, and of the people who see what's happening. And I talked about this, Albin, that Martin Luther was a lot like that. He was a champion of the common man. He was utterly brilliant, but he said the stuff that everybody was thinking, but that nobody dared to say. And he somehow was made by God to say it. So that's part of Trump's appeal. We're going to go to a break. Folks, if you're interested in the aforementioned books, Donald Drains the Swamp, Donald Builds the Wall, you can get them all at mystore.com. That's Mike Lindell's website, so please go there, mystore.com. Use the code ERIC. If you use the code ERIC, instead of $60 for 3 books, it's $34.99. So it's mystore.com. Use the code ERIC, and the website, mystore.com. The website is mystore.com. The discount code is ERIC. We'll be right back. Oh my God.
Great. I got to at least start by mentioning my book at the top of this segment.
I know I need to remind people. Lately, I've been trying to remind people of Donald Builds the Wall because anyway, here we go.
Yeah, but I did mention it in my article. In fact, I linked to it, but for some reason, my editor took the link out. I linked to your books over at the.
Are you serious?
Yeah. For some reason. I know it was annoying, but at least he left the mention in and all that. Because I'm like,
actually, I didn't see that. I thought I read the article. Did I skip that paragraph?
Yeah, you must have.
Here we go.
Anyway.
Okay. Welcome back, folks. Talking to Albin Sadar. I was mentioning my children's books, Donald Builds the Wall, Donald Drains the Swamp, Donald and the Fake News. And I should mention, Albin, you wrote a book, and now the title is obvious. I can never remember what it is. I just know that it's obvious. Oh, yeah, wait. It's actually obvious is the title.
I did that on purpose. So when people say, what's the obvious title of Albin's new book? And I was so like, obvious. Well, how about, obvious.
If you Google obvious, you'll find it.
Yes. And my name, that'll help, over at Amazon.com. But we were talking, of course, about, Donald Trump and how he's become a legendary figure. Let's face it, folks, whether you like him or not, that's just where he is. And I end this article, and of course, I got to get a little biblical here and there in these articles that I write. And at the end, I talk about how, what the enemy of Joseph, right, in the Old Testament, when his brothers were his enemies when they threw him in the pit, but he ended up coming out and basically saving Egypt and saving his brothers and his brother's family. Well, what the enemies intended for evil, God used for good. And when he was almost executed, when they tried to impeach him, when they tried everything, when they thought, okay, now we've stolen the election, but we've covered it up with the January 6th crap, but now he's going to go away and we're done with Donald. But he didn't go away. He would not go away. And God is now hopefully using him in a great and mighty way. And what is it, 20 days in office right now? And he's doing some amazing things.
He's getting her done.
Yeah.
Get her done. Actually, seriously, though, a lot of people have said it, but it bears repeating. Now, we know that the election of 2020 was stolen. And there's some people who they just writhe when you say that. They can't believe it. Oh, they're just convinced that that's not true. But I'll say this, folks, just wait. If I'm wrong, I will say so. If I make a mistake, I don't want to be, I'll never admit it. I'll admit it. But the evidence that I have seen has been dramatic, and the election was stolen. And eventually, more of the information is going to come out. I think you have Kash Patel. The reason they're scared of him is because he's onto this stuff. But my point is that if the election had gone the way we all hoped that it would, and if he'd been president, for the last 4 years, he wouldn't be president now, number one. Number two, we would never have seen all of the evil. And this is the thesis of your article, Albin.
Yes.
Blades. If all this horrible stuff hadn't been thrown at him, this evil that was thrown at him made him stronger, made him even braver, and it made him do what he's doing now. He just knew that if I get back in there, I got a job to do. He was not quite, listen, he was good before, but it's just nothing, because now he's aware of what's against him. And now we're uncovering this stuff. Now we're going scorched earth.
Yeah.
On the deep state. We're draining the swamp. None of this would be happening if things had gone the way we wanted to. So this is, to quote another scripture, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. A stolen election, 4 years of hell, COVID mandates and BLM and all this stuff that they tried to destroy this nation. By the grace of God, it has backfired. And that's really what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And in my AmericanThinker.com article called Being a Witness to the American Miracle That Has Played Out Over the Past 16 Years, I talk about that. I do mention Romans 8:28 because I go all the way back to 16 years. Now, you might say, well, it's the last 4 years. They were so terrible. But see, I go all the way back to Barack Obama. Why? Because Barack Obama beat out Hillary Clinton for the nomination to represent the Democrats, and she would have easily beaten, John McCain. She would have been in there for 8 years, and then people would have said, okay, we got a woman now. Let's go for the black guy, and he would have been in there for another 8 years. By the time those two were done with America, America would be done. But what happened? They decided, let's go with Barack Obama. So he goes in for those 8 years, but Hillary just wasn't strong enough. People were like, yeah, we did the different thing. Yeah, a woman, she's not, I don't know. Let's try somebody with some common sense. So then they put in Donald Trump, and that's the end of Hillary. If she wanted, I guess in 2028, she could try to resurge, but who knows? But that was the end. And then Donald was in there, and everybody started to see, because they had to play their hand. They had to say, like, look, we can't wait. We got to get rid of Donald now because he's actually doing something. We got to do whatever we can, impeach him, have the press to just denounce him, call him a racist, call him a bigot, call him everything, get him out of there. And they did it. They did it with what happened. And I love this quote from Tucker Carlson. And this was about 2 weeks before he was let go by Fox. This is what he said on the air in March of 2023. He said, January 6th, I think, is probably second only to the 2020 election as the biggest scam in my lifetime. So Tucker knew that the January 6th was a smokescreen. And it is because they become completely hysterical when confronted with the fact that deviates from their lies. So as soon as you say something about January 6th, oh, it's not an insurrection, they really are there protesting a stolen election. It's like they go apoplectic. They go, no, these guys are insurrectionists, and the 2020 is the most secure election in American history. Tucker knows, he knew, and that, I think, is the real reason why they had to get him out of Fox, because he was getting too close to the truth.
Well, this is the thing, is that they have fought, and they're still fighting today. I talked to John Zmirak about it. They'll do anything they can get away with. But here's the issue. Now we're on to them. And Donald Trump, by the grace of God, is on to them. He's prepared. We'll be right back talking to Albin Sadar, the author of a book with the title Obvious. The title is obvious. Yes, obvious. Let's welcome back. I'm talking to Albin Sadar, not to be confused with his identical twin, Tony Sadar. A lot of people have confused them. And I got to say, Albin, because you're identical twins, you really are very, very similar. I've just begun to notice that. But I've noticed that you are more similar to Tony than he is to you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand completely. I look in the mirror and I say, now that's a twin right there. I look at my twin brother and I was like, yeah, I don't know.
And yet he looks exactly like you. It's just incredible.
Sometimes. Yeah.
But you look nothing like him. It's weird. I don't know if maybe doctors can look into that.
By the way, you've been popping up everywhere, and I saw you recently on Newsmax, and you quoted something from Thomas Paine, and I thought, well, wait a minute. In my book, Obvious, I have a great quote from Thomas Paine that I'm sure you're aware of, but it didn't seem to suit the situation. But I got to read it now because this is all about the tyranny that has taken over America and was blatant in the last 4 years. But Thomas Paine wrote in The American Crisis, tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. And so on election morning, when it was November 6th this year, and Trump, about 2 a.m. Eastern time, when he was declared the clear winner, What a glorious triumph that was. What a glorious, glorious triumph that was.
And again, it's hard to believe because what we've been through as a nation, it's been it's been painful. It's difficult. And you know what? I always wonder, folks like, David French, Russell Moore, all these people try to paint him as so evil. You kind of wonder, will any of them ever see that they were mistaken? That would be my hope. That really would be my hope. But so many of them, they don't seem to be. But I think most Americans are getting it. I mean, there were a lot of Americans who bought the lies of CNN and the New York Times, and I think a lot of people are waking up. So it's going to be a very fascinating few years with this president.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you know what? The other thing is, and I think we were all praying about this too, not just that what Donald Trump would get in, but that on day one, and this happened, he signed a executive order releasing those folks from January 6th. I mean, it's just an amazing thing that in this country you could sit in jail for 4 years without a trial, without even like a clear cut case of what you did wrong to deserve 4 years in prison, in jail. And if it's like, well, for trespassing, where in this country have you trespassed and spent pretty much any time in jail, let alone 4 years? And so he is righting the wrong. And there's an article I have at the stream called Restoring What the Locusts Have Eaten. And now these guys are out, and we're hoping we're going to get the true story behind what they had to go through in these prisons, and wonder if we are in a third, or were in a third world country when this stuff went on, and what they went through. And hopefully this is going to be a healing process for a lot of people, and certainly an eye-opening process for a lot of people out there.
I hope that many of these J6 folks will run for office.
Yes.
Because if you've experienced what they've experienced, you've got to ask, why did God allow that? What am I going to do with my life now? And these people are heroes. They have been through hell. They have seen it. They've suffered. And so I hope very much that that many of them will run for office. It could be local office, but they need to understand that, as horrible as that was, in some ways that qualifies them. It qualifies them to represent we the people, because they have suffered. And I have a lot of hope for the country, just because I think that many of them will run for office. John Strand, who's a friend, he's been on this program a couple of times. I believe he's going to run for office. I really hope so. We need those voices out there.
Yeah, yeah, and I know Mike Lindell is trying to get Tina Peters out now, because I mean, my goodness, she did her job. She exposed the fraud, and it's like, no, you're going to prison. And I'm hopeful.
Explain to the audience who Tina Peters is, because not everybody's tracking.
Well, I believe it was in Arizona, right? Eric, you may know this better than I. And she did like an audit, of the machines and all that, and found out that something was funky here, that it didn't all add up. And so she brought it, as she should, to like the election board or something like that. And they're kind of like, no, you can't do that. You can't show this or whatever. And so they basically said, you did something illegal there. You went in and you did this examination. Maybe she wasn't supposed to, whatever. But the grand jury or whatever there decided that she should stand trial, and then she was found guilty, and she supposedly said, I guess she's spending, I don't know how many years in prison. But it's like, well, wait, what? It's like when they say, you know what, there is no evidence. It's like they didn't look at the evidence, and then they declared there is no evidence. That's what seems to have happened quite clearly in this case with Tina Peters.
Well, that's what I said it before. I keep wondering, this information it's going to come out, folks. That's what's so interesting. We're in a time of revelation. Things are being revealed. The corruption is being revealed. Did anybody dream that we could get to the bottom of all of the corruption in our government? Did anybody dream there was this much corruption in the government? What we're seeing with USAID, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's tons of corruption in the rest of the vast bureaucracy. And let's be clear, that bureaucracy is the antithesis of what the founders hoped for when they gave us this glorious country. Our form of government was meant to be the smallest government you could have so that it's close to people, so that people can elect their representatives. Now we have this vast unelected bureaucracy that just exists to keep themselves in power. It's wicked, it's corrupt, and it's only by the grace of God that Donald Trump was elected and that he is deputizing people to go after the corruption, to expose the corruption. So Albin, you talk about, that famous scriptural verse where the Lord says, I will restore what the locusts have eaten. We're at a time right now, we're going to go to break here. We're at a time right now where we're seeing restoration. We're seeing that a lot of the stuff that we accepted as normal, folks, we didn't have to accept it. God has another way. I think we're restoring this nation to its roots. That is my hope and my prayer. We'll be right back. We're talking to Albin Sadar. He's the author of a book titled Obvious. We're talking to Albin Sadar, author of a book. The title is Obvious. Wait a minute. Obvious is the title.
Yes,
Obvious.
it is. It is.
Okay.
Yep, that's
Go
the
ahead,
title.
Sorry.
Yes. So I wanted, before our time is up again, this is great. When Joe Biden, he had some lucid times there when he was campaigning supposedly for Kamala, and he seemed to slip every once in a while. He put on a MAGA hat, he'd say these weird things like they're all a bunch of garbage. And of course, Donald Trump turns that around and he's driving a garbage truck the next day. I mean, whatever, everything seemed to fall in place for Donald. But I love this. And there's a link to this in my article called Being a Witness to the American Miracle, which you can find at americanthinker.com. It's the first part of the first paragraph. When Donald Trump and Melania showed up at the White House the morning of the inauguration, Donald Trump gets out of the car, and before Melania even gets a chance to go around the car, Joe and Jill are standing there on the front porch or whatever it is of the White House. And as Donald approaches, and he takes maybe half a step, Joe Biden says, "Welcome home." And I thought, isn't that funny? It's like Joe Biden is saying, like, look, I've been squatting here for the last 4 years, or, I've been house sitting, but it is your house. And, come on in. It's your place. Come on back in.
I have to say that, Joe Biden has said so many really despicable things. I mean, some of the speeches he gave, the lying, really vile stuff. So to see any humanity or any grace, it's very moving that he would be gracious enough to say, welcome home. That is, to me, it's a very moving thing. Joe Biden was gracious to me personally when he took my phone and was willing to take a photo of me with then President Obama.
Yeah.
There are moments of graciousness and humanity in him. And so for the sake of his soul, I hope that he I hope we get to see him in heaven, because he's been, it looks to me like he traded his soul for power, and it's really horrible. But when you get a little glimpse of his humanity, like when he says welcome home, I have to say it gives me hope. Maybe I'm a starry-eyed naive kid, but I would like to think that somehow there's hope for somebody like him. It's been such a difficult time.
Yeah, it has. By the way, I always find it fascinating that you are a Queens kid and John Smirak is a Queens kid, right? And Donald Trump is from Queens as well. It's like some great people seem to have come out of Queens.
Out of the borough of Queens. That's right. I was born in Astoria. I was born in the same hospital as John Smirak. Whoa. I guess 18 or 19 months apart, something like that. Same hospital. I don't think Donald Trump was born in the same hospital, but we're all from Queens. Yeah, you don't think of Queens. Don Rickles was from Queens. Did you know that?
No, I did not. No, I saw Don Rickles in one of his very last. In fact, it might have been the last time we went to Atlantic City. A friend of mine, Jonathan, and we went to Atlantic City to see him live in Atlantic City, Don Rickles. And it was just great. He was just as funny as always, right? The likes of him we will probably never see.
Hey, by the way, I don't know if I told you this, but when I think of Don Rickles, I think I was a big fan of the Dean Martin roast back when the 70s. The Dean Martin, it was the greatest thing ever. And the other day when I was at the Huckabee final taping down in Nashville, I met Rich Little. I couldn't believe I met one of the greats from the Dean Martin roast, because I think of him, Foster Brooks, Charlie Callis, and Don Rickles. Those were the four,
Charlie Callis. When was the
right?
last time his name came up? He's wow.
Charlie Callis, Foster Brooks, Don Rickles, and Rich Little. Those are the four guaranteed you're going to laugh.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege to meet the great Rich Little. He was on this program, I don't know if it was 5 years ago, whatever it was. Albin, we're out of time, but you
Okay.
are still the author of a book with the title Obvious. The title of the book is Obvious. The book is actually titled Obvious. Obvious is the title of the book. Thanks for listening.